Supporters in the Premier League develop certain reputations.
We mustn't forget that it's been raining, so...
I wanted to try and see which Premier League fan bases were the most overconfident. So I attempted to create a more objective measurement, the Fanbase Delusion Index. I took predictions from the fans of each team from the start of 13 different Premier League seasons. I took each fan's prediction away from their actual finishing position. So, if you predicted Chelsea to win the league last year, you would have gotten a delusion score of 5. The higher the number, the higher the delusion. A negative score indicates that you predicted your team to finish lower than they actually did. I then repeated that for each fan base across every year and recorded the results. I made sure to take each fan's highest listed serious suggested answer. Some, like this Arsenal predictor in 2005-2006, said first or second again, or maybe fourth. If you're willing to suggest it might happen, then I'm holding you to it. This prediction counted as first in my records, and I don't want to see any, ooh, maybe we could win it if it went well, talk from you, okay? If you make your prediction, I want you to stand by it. That's all of the vital information. If you just came to get to the juicy bits, or you desperately need to know who topped my very scientific study, then please skip to one of the timestamps on screen now. For the more patient viewers, my next chapter will be discussing some questions which were interesting to me that arose while I was researching this video. These were my doubts with my approach to measuring fan delusion. Starting with the most fundamental question, I actually think that my general method of measuring delusion was probably on the right track. This doubt cropped up when I was repeatedly filling in the Man City scores of prediction equals first, actual finish equals first. I found myself asking the philosophical question of can you be overconfident as a fan base if you pick your team to win the league and then they repeatedly win the league. I think the scoring system is correct on this front. I don't think anyone can call you or your fan base too confident if your team wins it, you get to brag about it. A potential solution to this problem would be to find game-by-game predictions rather than simply finding out expectations for the end of the season, to see even if in their correct league prediction if there was still some overconfidence when it came to big individual games. Taking our earlier example of being a Man City fan, going by the bookies' odds, you'd be doing the sensible thing by predicting a win in nearly every game. So even breaking things down to a game-by-game method might not work for the very good and the very bad teams in the league. The best option for all of these problems might be if fans predicted the amount of points they were going to get in the season, rather than their finishing position. This would mean that while you may not be able to predict your slip-ups exactly game by game, you could roughly say how many times you thought your team was going to drop points over the course of the season. Sadly though, getting fans to seriously have an idea of how many points are reasonable for their team to be getting by the end of the year seems highly unlikely on any kind of a wide scale. It was already tough enough finding actual pre-season fan predictions for every team. It feels wrong to me to call a Fulham fan's prediction of 10th with a finish of 14th as delusional as a Man United fan predicting that they would finish first and actually finishing 5th, especially because the difference in points tends to be a lot smaller in the middle of the pack. One potential solution would be to simply rank each prediction as either correct, optimistic or pessimistic, putting a cap on the amount of points that could be earned in any one year, although I don't think that fully solves the problem. This again is where being able to find game-by-game predictions, or ideally total points predictions, would probably be helpful. I think that this is another slightly philosophical question, but the study protects against it somewhat by averaging it out across multiple years. If your team keeps collapsing or repeatedly performing under expectations, then at some point you need to start adjusting them. Although some kind of monthly check-in or game-by-game data could again solve the issue, if you consider it to be one. All of this data is the opinion of 20 individual fans chosen by The Guardian for each season. That one fan's opinion is unlikely to always be representative of the whole fanbase's dominant opinion, although there is an increased likelihood that they speak for a sizable portion of the fanbase, as they are often contributors or owners of various fan blogs or fan websites. 13 seasons isn't a bad selection, but a total of 260 predictions isn't the most fantastic sample size, especially for teams who are only in the league for a season or two. This is by far the biggest problem with what I've done here. My original plan was to troll subreddit preseason prediction threads for the most upvoted prediction on each team's subreddit, but there were a surprising amount with no consistent season to season preseason predictions. A lot of the teams who did make predictions contained the hilarious and original joke answer of spamming first as their prediction. That's why I ended up looking elsewhere. The Guardian's preseason fan predictions ended up being the best that I could find, but it had its problems. Promoted teams in particular seem to have extremely optimistic predictions, but I'm not sure that would be their take if they had to put money on the issue. If you know where to find a decent selection of fan preseason predictions for your club, if you know a fan site or a Twitter account that does one every year, or even better, every game, preferably sorted by popularity, like some kind of poll, or with likes or upvotes, then please let me know in the comments, on Blue Sky, or even by email. Right now I think I have an interesting little look back on a set of articles, but I'd love to know like proper fanbase opinions. We're into the good stuff now. Predicting your team to finish first was the most common choice by quite a distance, with nearly 3 predictions per season. Only 2 teams who won the league had fans who did not predict them to win it: Chelsea in 16-17 and Leicester in 15-16. This makes sense as there's an upper limit at the top of the table, and all serious contenders like to throw their hat into the ring at the start of the season. 10th along with 12th seem to be common picks for fans of teams who had previously been in a relegation battle and were convinced that they could push on and achieve the bliss of mid-table anonymity. Sadly, this was often not the case, as it had the biggest gap between predictions and reality. Teams predicted to finish 10th finished on average 3.66 positions lower than that. Only 7 fans out of 260 made predictions of their team getting relegated, and only 66 out of 260 predictions were lower than their team's final finishing position. This definitely highlights that there's a pretty optimistic set of fans who were chosen to write these pieces. 2023-24 was the year with the best predictions out of the 13, and the worst year was 2013-14, when Cardiff, Norwich and Fulham all got relegated after their fans predicted comfortable mid-table finishes, with predictions being an impressive 48 places away from reality out of a worst possible score of 190 if every single fan in the league predicted first place. The most delusional individual predictions was a 3-way tie between Aston Villa in 2004-2005, Leeds United in 2021-22, and Leicester City in 2022-23. And the most pessimistic prediction by far was unsurprisingly Leicester in 2015-16, followed by 2020-21 West Ham and 2010-2011 West Brom. So now to the important part, the fanbase rankings. Starting with our most realistic fanbases, Newcastle and Wolves both had a decent read on the situation, although Newcastle in particular were more of a balancing out act of being wrong both ways than any particular prediction proficiency. But the West Brom fans were the only ones to emerge with any street cred from this little study, as their predictions averaged out to being 0.125 places lower than their actual final spots in the league, the only team with a negative score, fueled largely by a 2010 prediction which was 8 spots below where they actually finished. To the business end of things, Arsenal in 5th place are the highest of the traditional Big Six, beating out Liverpool and Chelsea. They also got the award of worst attempt at an insulting nickname in football history with Greedy Bayor. Cashley Cole is just about tolerable, Greedy Bayor is not. Constant relegation candidates Watford and Sunderland, along with recent relegation candidates Everton, just miss out on the top spot. Instead, Brighton come out on top with their fan predictions missing their actual league position by an average of just under 4 spots per year. From doing this analysis, I think I can basically confirm that fans go into seasons hoping for the best from their team in their expected positions. Fans of relegation candidates love to predict their team just about managing to beat the drop. Lower half teams dream of a top 10 finish. Mid-table sides dream of European qualification. And top 4 sides always shoot for the moon and predict the trophy coming home. And you know what? I don't necessarily think that's even a bad thing. You have 9 months during the season to face reality for your team. I don't think I've come close to a complete fan delusion index yet. I hope to revisit this topic with a revised methodology and a better dataset in the future. For now, ignore the flaws and go and use this video to make fun of Brighton fans. Look at you, with your well-run club, who's turned you into serial overachievers. You have some slightly overconfident fans. Now go steal some chips and ruin some seaside photos in shame.